I like trains. This isn't really my attempt to do the geekiest talk ever involving trains and lasers and computers and things. It's actually very much about craft and hobbies and about users. We heard about users from GDS this morning. And if any of you have ever done anything in a craft and you've written software, the one thing you realize is that everyone within a craft has completely forgotten about users. They're so obsessed with making the things that they want to that they forget about everyone else there. And this is kind of an exploration into that. So I'm a dad. I became a dad 6 years ago. It has real benefits like free footplate rides on steam engines, which is pretty cool. And what I realized was that I wanted to make the models that I make differently. So normally I make models out of brass and bits of plastic and wood, and they're very intricate and they're all built from scratch. But I actually want to make models with my kids. And I remembered about airfix kits. And airfix kits don't really exist for model trains, and especially not for sort of the niches of model trains. So I wanted to see if I could fix that, and at the same time try and understand sort of scaling manufacture from micro to mini. You know, we're never going to do injection molding, we're never going to do lots of these kits, but how does it feel to make a few of them? So I've been on this journey to make models differently, and the first thing I started to understand was what it was that I loved about my craft, and try to, write down a few words. And all of these seem to be sort of emotional qualities rather than physical qualities. And I then started thinking about how I bought the kits that you get around. And I realized that I was either really bored by what Hornby do, or I hated the stuff that small providers tended to do, because they're really hard. And we'll come back to what that is in the background in a minute. And what I really hated were these things that came in boxes, and the only story I could tell about them from a craft perspective was taking it out of the box and possibly breaking it as I did so, because Hornby make their things so minute nowadays. So I'd been doing lots of thinking about this, and then 3 quite amazing things happened. I got chickenpox. That knocked me out for a month, as having chickenpox does. I did lots of sleeping. I did lots of almost hallucinating, which is quite fun, and that could be why I'm now up on stage here. These amazing engines, it's a bit dark here, came back from America, and I'll talk about them in a minute, but that really catalyzed one thing. And then the Olympics happened. And who didn't want to go and start an industrial revolution after seeing Kenneth Branagh being Brunel, big fuck-off rings of fire in the sky? It's just everything. So we're bringing engineering back. Proud to be British, apologies for anyone in the audience. So we thought, could we make a kit of something moderately obscure? Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm surprised people haven't shouted out already, this is a Dinorwic quarry slate wagon. There's only one quarry that had these in North Wales. They carried slates. They had about 1,000 of these. And if you want to make a model of anything to do with the Dinorwic quarry, you need lots of these. And we come back to this. At the moment, this is the best kit for making one of these. This is an etched brass kit. I always describe this as origami with jeopardy. It's like brass and you fold it and you have to hot solder it or use super glue. The number of times you injure your fingers is huge. There is a craft in there, but I'm buggered if I can find it. And I really want to make models. I love making models. I love painting them. I love doing details and scenery. So we started measuring it to see if we could make a kit. So we went to Wales and we measured the real thing. Took lots and lots of measurements, lots of pictures. And then we found this really wonderful 3D modeler. And we said to him, could you make one of these? And he said yes. And about a day later, from all the pictures we sent him, this came back. And then we compared it to the published plans, and we realized that we'd actually got more accurate plans than the published ones. And then he asked me how I'd like to split it up into a kit. So I got out my really elite Photoshop skills, and I colored it in different colors. And then he sarcastically sent the render back in the same colors. And then he put it on a sprue. We sent it off to Shapeways. Bag of plastic comes back. Made one. That's the most amazing feeling in the world. Something that you didn't have before, and you've wanted for years, and you've commissioned it. It's a real fuck yeah moment. And this was the very first one that I made. We've now done some more variations on them. And then, of course, we took it back to meet its big brother, just so we could check the size was right. And the cool thing about size, and this isn't the only place where we're going to talk about scale, is the real holy grail for models is to be able to make the same model in lots of different scales, because you're never sure what sort of mad scale people want. Now, if I did this with injection molding, the tooling for all of those things, even if I could tool it, is about £15,000. So quite frankly, I'm not going to do that. But using the same 3D file, we can make them this size, we can make them this size. The small one that's up there is about half the size of this, and it's still functional, all from the same file. So it becomes really, really cost-effective and really interesting. And so I thought, there might be something in that. And then we got distracted. We got distracted by this amazing engine. This is Winifred. She was made in 1885. She is essentially the Victorian-era dumper truck. That's what she did. She just dragged things from here to there. There was no finesse about it. But she worked until 1965. And I can't imagine a JCB nowadays having that longer lifespan. And it's all to do with engineering, knowledge, and craft. These things were mended by hand by men with hammers and welding torches in workshops in Wales. And they knew what to do. They understood engineering. They understood their craft. And as a result, they had very long lives. And then in 1965, the quarry decided that it didn't need steam engines anymore. It wanted to use diesel engines. And Winifred and some of her sisters got shipped off to America. They were bought by an antiquities dealer. And Winifred ended up in a storage unit underneath the grandstand of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for about 45 years, before eventually she was repatriated. And she was repatriated about the time that I had chickenpox. And I remember reading lots and lots and lots and thinking, if I get in touch with the man who's just brought her back, he might think I'm a stalker, but I might say, can I come and scan your train with a laser and see how it goes? And so I did, and I was sort of saying, look, it's amazing, it's incredible, I've compared the pictures, it's identical, it's the same as it was. And he was like, this is brilliant, this is fantastic. So it's particularly brilliant because ever since he brought the engine home, everyone has been telling him what to do with it. It's such an amazing historical artifact. I mean, imagine anything that hasn't been touched for nearly 50 years and being in a room with it. It's quite phenomenal. And everyone was saying, you must leave it as it is, you must put in almost a vacuum to display it. And suddenly we could capture everything about it with a laser scanner and a gigapan scanner. And so that's what we did. And to give you an idea, these are all the parts that normally get replaced when these things get mended. So if you did repair it, it would change. So I got the best desk ever for about 4 days. 2 days in September, 2 days in November. We went to Wales, it was freezing cold, it rained all the time. We were indoors and we introduced Winifred to all the technology that she'd missed while she was sleeping. And the first robot that she met was the Gigapan camera. This is a product of the NASA missions to Mars. They didn't have cameras that could capture stuff in high enough detail, so they invented robotic heads. And you can now buy these robotic heads. You take loads and loads of pictures, and you stitch them together, and you get something that's about 508 megapixels. So we're capturing tiny details with this. And then we got a lucky break in the weather, and we managed to catch the other side. That's a lucky break in the weather in Wales, by the way. And the detail is just incredible. You can see individual scratches. You can see where the hands of the driver's have been on it. You've seen where they've mended the pipework and bent it by hand. You can see the remnants of the last fire, the last ash, all of the slate on the floor of the cab. You can see on the driver's side, just about here, where he stood every day and worked and rested his foot against the side, and that's where the paint fell off. There's loads of details. And we felt at the end of this that we'd done all right, and that people couldn't really complain about her changing. There's even some very early graffiti from one of the drivers who's punched his name into a piece of brass there. Then we introduced her to the second one, which is a laser scanner. This was the only time I could actually capture a picture of the laser. Flickers really, really, really fast. You expect it to be like Tron. It's not. We did think about putting all the sort of blue lines back in post, but we decided that'd be cheating. And a man arrived with his laser scanner and a collection of these white sizing balls. These are so you can get an idea of how big the thing is that you're measuring against. And in very cramped conditions, this is Ben from a company called Digital Surveys. He normally does oil rigs for a living. He normally scans oil rigs because nobody has any plans of them. So they go and they retrospectively make plans. So this was quite nice for him, really. Even better weather than he normally gets in the North Sea. And what came out was a laser scan, which is this. So this is a point cloud of the engine. I'm not quite sure how much data there is. Finally, when we last looked at it, it was something like 500 gigabytes of data to get this sort of resolution. We've actually borrowed an even bigger scanner for doing the next one, and we'll get even better data. This stuff is getting cheaper, quicker, better data all the time. It's like Moore's law for the physical world. 3D printing, 3D scanning. They're in that mode. Maybe they're even exceeding it. So we then did a lot of analysis, and this is the computer model of Winifred. And this is going to be really useful for them putting her back together again. And we've even got details like the dents that are in her. And of course, once you get data like that, the first thing you want to do is print it. And so I sent off to Shapeways, and it came back. And here she is. It's quite amazing. I now know what data feels like in a really interesting way. And for somebody who's played with open data for a long while, and we're actually opening up all the LiDAR data in about a week's time for people to play with, it's quite amazing to hold data and to sort of see it in all its detail. And we're now in the process of splitting this up to make a kit out of it. And we can make a kit whatever size people like, and in better materials as well. This is the cheapest material. We're doing it in resin now. And then obviously we took Winifred back to meet Big Winifred, and we invited the railway press, who stood and stared and got a bit confused. And they called me a techno wizard, which is great. I'm thinking of having that on a t-shirt now. And then we did another fun thing. So to test whether we got it right, we got the guys at Makey Lab to print us one of these. And this is the latch off the back. This is Julian, whose engine it is. And it fits one-to-one. We could replace that metal latch with this one. But obviously it'd be far more fun to replace it with this one, which is printed stainless steel. So this is fresh from Shapeways, straight out the box. You could actually just put it straight on the engine. And the nice thing is it's got all the bumps and the defects that the original has as well. So the cool thing is we can now print parts for steam engines, which is where the scale of up to 1-to-1 comes in. Because what we can now do is if there's a part on this engine, admittedly a part that doesn't take too much pressure, so I don't think I'd like to be too near to a boiler that's been 3D printed yet, we can replace it. And so we're going to do that with the smoke box door, which is completely shot, and instead of spinning a new one and losing all of that 100-odd years of patina and wear and putting a brand new one on, we're actually printing a brand new one which will have all the defects in there, apart from the ones that stop it working. So, once we'd worked out how to do all of this, we thought, well, knowing how to do it is one thing. Sharing how to do it is another thing altogether and feels like the right thing to do. So lots of people really interested in what we're up to and said, well, we'd love to do similar things. So following from this statement, so John Wilshire, hiding up in the gods there, naughty boy, came up with this lovely comment, that actually making things people want is more important than the 20th century way of making people want things. And that's where this started for me. I wanted a particular thing and I couldn't buy it. So I've worked out how to make it. And now we're working out how to let other people make the things they want. So we've built a crowdsourcing platform very, very quickly, sort of 2-week build. And people are now suggesting kits that they'd like. Other people are voting for them. And when it gets to sort of having a bit of a critical mass, then we're getting in touch with the railways and saying, hello, we're a bit mad, can we come and scan your trains, please? And they're all saying yes, which is great. And we're just about to launch our first Kickstarter campaign in the next sort of day or so to make some... What's that? I scanned your head, give us a break. So why was I scanning his head? Well, actually, figures are really interesting. The majority of figures on model railways are a bit rubbish, and they're always the same people. You go and look at everyone else's lap, station master pointing. And so we thought it'd be kind of fun if we could actually scan people's faces and people's figures, and we could create them for their railways, which we're just starting to prototype at the moment. And to give you an idea of sort of scale, it's a bit dark, but that's a 5p piece on the right, and this is a model figure on the left. And then back to the techno wizard bit. It feels slightly wrong that this thing is seen as techno wizardry, because it's not really. Any idiot with like a USB turntable, a knackered shelf from an IKEA thing, some bits of Velcro, a Kinect, and one of their children's toys that they've stolen can do it. So can I switch to the other one? So there we go. Let's scan the JCB. And this is behaving almost exactly the same way as a laser scanner is. There are loads of bits of scanning software you can get for Kinects. Most of them are fairly rubbish. These guys, Artec, make proper scanners, and so they know how to deal with all the data. But I'll stop it before it goes too far. But basically, there's something we've scanned. So I'll just let that stitch itself together. So what it's doing is it's recognizing bits of the JCB and it's sticking them together. And that's all the laser scanner does. So what we're really interested in is exploring bits of everyday tech at the moment to build a sort of platform that anyone can go and scan stuff. OpenStreetMap did this amazing thing with mapping parties and GPS. Wouldn't it be fabulous if we could make a similar thing for people who love stuff in museums and whole crowds of people go and scan everything in museums, obviously whilst not infringing copyright, because then really cool things could happen. So that's sort of what you can do with just everyday stuff that's lying around. Let's switch back. So, and I'll flick through the video that I prepared earlier, just in case that went tits up. So we now to do all the geometry bit. The other bit about model railways that we're just starting on is this bit, which is how you might control your trains. So we're playing around with putting an Arduino inside a 3D printed train. We're making the Arduino run Node.js. It's basically to try and make the geekiest talk in history. And because we think it'd be a really fun way of teaching kids about engineering and making physical things. You know, who didn't love making Airfix kits when they were a kid, but who always wanted to make them move? And I think you can teach kids software engineering and hardware engineering by doing this sort of stuff and open sourcing all the code and all of the shape files. I just wanted to say a big thank you to all of these people who've helped on this endeavor. VJ Paul, who's our lovely modeler, Ben of Digital Surveys, Julian, whose engine it was, who basically let me indulge this mad idea. Alice and the guys at Makey Lab, who printed the lovely thing and are constant sources of knowledge. And Dan Crow, from Songkick, who's another train nut and basically comes along and tells me that I am mad, but it's okay. And for those of you who want to follow along, we're taking the big laser to Wales Monday and Tuesday. We're going to scan 4 engines in 2 days. So please follow along on the blog and on Twitter. And thank you very much.